Welcome back to the Fat Guys and Friends podcast. Another NFL preview today. Today, with me, I am Colton Bartholomew. With me, as always, fellow Fat Man and co-host of this show, Mr. Logan Langer. How are you, sir?
Good, Bart. How are you?
Oh, fantastic, man. Today we have one of our friends making his first appearance. Been friends for quite a while, though. Mr. Steven Tyler. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Oh, pretty good. Steve is on with us today because we are doing the AFC West, which is home to my Super Bowl champion Broncos and his Oakland Raiders. So we will run down those four teams in our AFC West previews today. All right. Steve, you are the guest in the show here, so where do you want to start?
Let's start with the Chiefs. Kind of the middle of the pack, I think, this year. Let's start there.
Okay, let's go with the Chiefs. Coming off an 11-5 year last season. Started kind of rough, but I think they rattled off 10 wins to end the season. Wang, what do you have for their key pickups and losses?
For the Chiefs' key additions, I only had one name, and it's not even a very big name. It's Mike Wallace. Well, not Mike Wallace, Mike Williams, who last played in, I think, 2014. So when that's your biggest pickup, you didn't do much in the offseason. And for
Very true.
Key losses was Chase Daniel, backup quarterback, who's now on the Eagles. Sean Smith, who's a solid corner, and Tyvon Branch, who is a very solid safety that have both moved away from the team.
Yes, he was. The Chiefs were actually really, really good on defense last year, even outside of their great pass rush, which I'm sure we'll get into. Another name that's kind of an acquisition, but not entirely because he's already on the team, but Jamal Charles will be back from injury, and when he's on the field, he is one of the best running backs in the NFL. Does everything for that team. Kind of interesting, though, how good their backups did last season. So let's start there with the Chiefs. A really talented backfield with guys like Niall Davis, Charkandrick West, and obviously Jamal Charles. Steve, you and I watch the Chiefs quite a bit because we have to play them. I mean, Andy Reid loves having those types of guys, and why do you think they're just so successful at churning out guys that can, run the ball out of the backfield, catch it out of the backfield, and do all those types of things?
I think they scheme really well for their running backs. They have good plays. They don't go outside of the comfort zone of the running back. They're not putting Jamal Charles back there and trying to smash him between the tackles 42 times a game. They know where to play him, what to play him with, and how to use him. I guess the biggest, weakness in their backfield is obviously health. Jamal Charles is great, like you said, when he's there, but, how great is he for 8 games a year?
Yep.
That doesn't do you a whole lot of good.
For sure, and he, like you said, explosive and can really be a game changer every time that he's out there, but he's had 3 seasons now end with injuries, and then 3 seasons ago it was in the playoffs he ended his year with an injury. Another addition they had that just happened recently to this recording, they added Nick Foles to back up Alex Smith. Kind of interesting that Foles would take a job that he really has very little chance, unless Alex Smith gets hurt, to take, as opposed to maybe Dallas, where Tony Romo has a history of getting hurt.
Yeah, that position's open about week 5.
Exactly. For a guy like Nick Foles, Wang, why do you think he chose the Chiefs over a place where he might actually, see the field because of performance or a injury history?
Mainly just because the Chiefs are probably going to be better than the Cowboys, maybe, or at least have been recently. So maybe it's him chasing a ring to some extent.
True.
Even when you say he has no chance of seeing the field, there's always a chance. And he's for sure, I don't even know about probably for sure going to be the number 2, because I don't know any other quarterback on the roster since they lost Chase Daniel.
No, yeah, he's definitely the number 2. One of the things I want to talk to you guys about the Chiefs is how they always seem to find a guy that can do everything, and Andy Reid likes to design some weird plays for. And right now that's DeAnthony Thomas. Got some handoffs last season, played a lot in the slot, quick bubble screens, and when he gets the ball in his hand, it is a blur watching him move. And Wang, where do you think his ceiling is as a player? Is he just kind of a gimmick guy, or can he be a a vital piece to an offense.
I think he's more of a gimmick guy because he's only about 5'8", so you can't really play receiver in the NFL at 5'8". But the way he's in the return game, he can be a slot receiver at times. He can be in the backfield. He reminds me of a former Chief a lot, Dante Hall, who was crazy in the return game and a okay receiver, just a blur, like you said. So he's really a Dante Hall type player, more gimmicky, but sometimes gimmick players can find the end zone a lot, and he's one of those guys.
For sure.
And what better team to be a gimmick player on than a team coached by Andy Reid? I mean, the guy loves his gimmick players.
Oh, yeah. He likes to call those at the worst times, too. And as a fan of a rival team, I love it. A couple of other weapons we haven't mentioned yet. Travis Kelce at tight end, Gronk Jr., and then Jeremy Maclin as a receiver. Finally broke that Chiefs record of not throwing a touchdown to receivers a couple of years ago. Had a nice year last year and can really be more than what he showed in Philly just because he didn't have a secondary guy next to him like Deshaun Jackson. Where do you see the Chiefs going, this offense going, Steve? Because they're kind of at a point where they know they have Charles. Hopefully they can keep him healthy all year. But then they also have this passing game that's emerging with some different weapons. Do you see them being a little more balanced, or do you see Reid going back to his ways in Philly where he threw it way too much?
I don't know. I hope Andy Reid, sees the error in his ways from past experience and tries to balance it out a little. Last year they were like 30th in passing yards. They were one of the worst teams when they were throwing the ball. And I shouldn't say worst team when they were throwing the ball. They just chose not to throw the ball. And as you look at that from a standpoint, why not get it to the outside a little more and throw it a little more, get it up in the air a little bit, just to take some pressure off Jamal Charles, especially because, as we know, he gets 40 carries a game and then he gets hurt. So why not pass it a little and try to keep your superstar healthy? Get him the ball in the situations that need it, but don't force it as much. And I hope at least that's what they try to do. That'd be the smart thing to do. But again, Andy Reid isn't always that guy. He tends to try to go big or go home. So with him, it's so unpredictable, but I hope that he's able to figure it out, that he needs to throw the ball just a little bit more. They only got 200 pass yards a game last year, and in today's NFL, that's not going to work.
For sure. And when you have a quarterback like Alex Smith who just deliberately doesn't throw the ball downfield, has zero faith in his ability to throw it more than 15 yards, I guess it might be a little bit tougher to game plan and get things going. But one last thing on the Chiefs offense, and Steve, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Oh, I love that they signed Eric Fisher for a huge contract.
Yeah. Way to just demolish your cap.
Yeah. Keep his terrible ass at left tackle and let him continue to get his ass kicked. It's great.
Yeah, please stuff Khalil Mack's highlight reel for next year.
Exactly. Shifting over to the Chiefs defense, like we already mentioned, one of the better defenses last year, really came on late. And everything on this defense really starts with their outside linebackers, Tom Ali and Justin Houston, arguably, top one or two best tandems in pass rushing in the NFL right now. And then you add that with a nose tackle like Dontari Poe, who absolutely has to get double teamed, otherwise he's going to be killing you. They have everything you need in the front seven to compete in today's NFL.
Yeah, if going with a good quarterback is the key to an offense, this day and age, building from your outside linebackers has kind of been the trend that has worked. From your Broncos, who had much success in it last year, we know. So I think having those strong outside linebackers and keeping them is going to keep them in the running for being a fairly decent team for a while.
Definitely, and the Chiefs kind of did the same thing that the Patriots did a few years ago, winning the Super Bowl, and then the Broncos did last year. They combined that pass rush with some really good cornerback play. Obviously, Marcus Peters and Marcus Cooper last year had kind of breakout years, and then Eric Berry, inspirational story that he is, had a really good season on the field. Wang, where do you see the Chiefs' defense kind of falling this year? Do you see them, taking another step and being kind of that top 5 team defense that they can be, or do you see them maybe falling back a little bit as age and Eric Berry's contract issues and everything like that start catching up with them?
I think they're going to go as far as their outside linebackers will take them. They're really the lifeblood of that defense. Justin Houston might be the best outside linebacker in football, and Tamba Hali isn't a slouch at all. So if they can rush the passer, and if those two corners you mentioned can play anything close to the way they played like last year, I don't see any reason why they can't be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 defense this year.
For sure. And they lost their offensive coordinator, Doug Peterson, who's now the head coach in Philly. I'm sure it'll change a little bit, but it's Andy Reid's style and it's his playbook. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he calls offensive plays.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the Chiefs.
You're an offensive coordinator underneath him. You get the car and the keys, but it's his game plan. You're gonna do what he tells you to do, no matter what.
For sure. So I think we all kind of sound like we're in agreement. The Chiefs are going to be a pretty solid team. Like we mentioned, coming off an 11-5 year. So let's jump over to our record predictions. Wang, where do you see the Chiefs falling this season, coming off that 11-5 in a playoff berth last season?
I don't think they really took any steps back at all, and I don't see any reason that they can't have another solid season again this year. So I have them taking a bit of a step back, but I still have them as a playoff team. I have them coming in at 10-6 on the year and getting the number 6 seed in the AFC playoffs.
All right, I actually redid this since last week when we were actually all talking about this. I'm right with you, actually. I think the Chiefs, the thing that I think that's going to hurt the Chiefs late in the season is that they have a Week 5 bye. So they have one of the first bye weeks, and when you play in the AFC West and you know you're going to have tough games in all your division games, some point that's going to trip you up when you've been playing 10 straight weeks and maybe the other team has only been going 2. So I've got them going 10-6, and I think they're going to actually end up on the outside of the playoffs. So I've got them 10-6 and missing the playoffs.
10-6 and missing the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
How mad would you be as a Chiefs fan?
Yeah, Chiefs would be pretty upset, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Well, I'll switch over and make my prediction. I think everybody's on the same page here. I went 9-7. I think they'll slip just a little bit because they're just, I don't know. They're just the Chiefs, and they have Andy Reid, and he's really good at going 9-7 and 10-6 and not really making a huge splash. But I see him losing a couple games. I see him losing to the Steelers. I think they'll lose both games to the Raiders, and they're going to lose the Panthers. But I really do think they're going to slip up and end up losing that late season game to the Broncos. I think they're going to come off a beat. They're going to beat up on the Titans one week, and then they're going to end up slipping and having that night game against the Broncos and end up losing at home.
It very well could. I mean, Andy Reid will cost them a game. That is just a guaranteed fact that you know about an Andy Reid team. He will screw something up and make them lose a game.
Yeah, they'll have 3rd and goal and call like a double reverse. And it's going to happen.
That's not far from what happened Week 2 against Denver last year.
I was trying to reference the play.
Game and they just gave it away. Steve, take us where we're going next. Which team we want to jump to now?
Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and go with your stupid ass Broncos, so we don't have to hear the phrase Super Bowl champs again.
The Super Bowl champion Broncos.
I put another loss in the column every time you say that. So.
I'll try to get it up to 16 for you. Wang, what do you have for the Super Bowl champion Broncos arrivals and departures?
They traded for Mark Sanchez. I just want to start there. They gave up
Sure
assets to trade for Mark Sanchez. They also signed Russell Okung, the left tackle from the Seahawks. Then their biggest losses were obviously a quarterback. They let Brock Osweiler walk. They lost Peyton Manning. They also lost Vernon Davis, who wasn't very good for them, but was still on the team. They lost Ryan Harris to the Steelers. Evan Mathis also left. Malik Jackson, Danny Trevathan, and Ryan Clady.
They did. One we forgot to mention was Donald Stevenson, a guard tackle guy that came over from the Chiefs. He's probably going to end up being the starting right tackle if everything goes according to plan. Let's start with those departures. That's been kind of the theme since they won the Super Bowl. Is everybody wanted money or wanted to retire? And Steve, obviously you want us to be bad, but how much do you think this is going to affect the Broncos this season?
I think it's bigger than some people are making it out to be. I mean, you have your team and then you lose half of them. That's going to punch you in the gut. I mean, that's awful. And I think the biggest thing people overlook is that Brock Osweiler left, and he was good. Like, he had good games. He was a good quarterback, and you guys just, I mean, he left. I mean, that was your option, and now you guys are down to really, really good Mark Sanchez or a draft pick. So I have fun with that.
Yeah, the thing with Brock Osweiler was he got so upset about getting benched in that Week 17 game against San Diego that he was pretty much already decided that he wasn't going to come back to Denver. And I don't entirely blame him because I think they handled that benching just a little poorly. I think if you're going to pull him out at halftime, so at least you can talk to him in private about it and not do it on the field.
Yeah, don't just throw him down.
But, yeah, the thing was, I mean, that game won us the AFC, got us the bye and home field throughout, which was super important to get into the Super Bowl, and they absolutely had to have it. So I understand his frustration and the fact that Denver didn't want to give him $18 million and Houston was all for it. I think Denver eventually would have given him that money, but I think Houston kind of showed him a little more love and was going to let him do that. The thing with Brock is he's still unproven. You're right that he had good games, but he had some bad ones too. The Raider game that you guys kicked our asses. Khalil Mack, 5 sacks. 3 or 4 of those were on the offensive line because that was who was it? Max Schofield just playing some terrible right tackle and getting worked. But Brock Osweiler had a tendency to hold on to the ball too long, and that was, a big reason that he didn't have the success that maybe Kubiak thought he could have. Mm-hmm. And talking about the quarterback situation as a whole now, Sanchez and Simeon seem to be the two guys that are going to be battling out during the preseason to get the number 1 spot. I think it's Sanchez's to lose, and the hope is that the Broncos are trying to get Sanchez back to New York Jets early. Mark Sanchez,
be careful there, yeah.
where he doesn't take a ton of early first couple of years, doesn't take a ton of chances, runs the offense correctly, hits open receivers, and kind of lets everybody else do the work for him. He just, plays a role. He's not going to win you the game, but he's not going to lose it either. And when you have the defense and the talent that the Broncos do on the other spots in the offense, I think that's kind of the best case you can have without having a star quarterback like they used to have.
That's very fair, yeah.
Wayne, what do you think of the Broncos trading up for Paxton Lynch?
They had to do it. I mean, there's no way you can go into camp with just Mark Sanchez and Trevor Simeon and tell your fan base, this is our future. Trevor Simeon has been surprising a lot of people in Bronco camp from what I hear. And if he didn't tear his ACL his senior year at Northwestern, he probably would have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. But because he was hurt, he fell to the 7th round. He could start games this year for the Broncos, I think. But trading up for Lynch is eventually going to be the guy in Denver, I would assume. Because you're not going to trade into the 1st round for a quarterback and not play him at least by year 2. So I got to think the plan is for Lynch to take the reins next season. Maybe even at the end of this season if it's a train wreck.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, right? I think he is the project for Kubiak and Dennison to kind of figure out how good he can be and then, put him in when he's ready to go. My thing is, I'm not super worried about the quarterback play. Obviously, it's the most important position, but how bad Peyton Manning was in the playoff run and just how limited he was, physically, whoever we put in is going to be better than that.
Yeah.
Now, mentally, nowhere close. But at least arm strength and accuracy, whoever we put in is better than 41-year-old Peyton Manning.
Whoever
Say
you
what
put,
you want about Sanchez, but he can throw the ball more than 30 yards down the field.
right?
Sure can. Might not be the right team, but you can get it down there.
It's going. It's gonna go somewhere.
Yeah. One position that I think myself and other Broncos fans are going to be really excited about this season are our tight ends. Jeff Heuerman was a guy that we drafted last season out of Ohio State, but he tore his ACL in training camp. He was actually in line to start after the first couple weeks of training camp because he was doing that well, and apparently he's come back just as good, and he's kind of more athletic, faster version of Owen Daniels, who is a Gary Kubiak guy. Fits his system perfectly with the zone blocking and the kind of drag routes the tight ends usually seem to do. And then Virgil Green, who has been the blocking tight end the last few years, kind of came on late with Osweiler in the receiving game. A huge target, potentially could be a really big red zone threat if he continues the progression he's on. So I'm really excited to see what comes from that position group.
I think the Bronco fans are going to be excited to see anybody that isn't Vernon Davis dropping game-winning passes.
Oh, sure. What? I was at the Packer Cowboy game that week that the Raiders kicked the Broncos' ass, and let me tell you, my TV is thankful because Vernon Davis would have caused some property damage in the Bartholomew.
God, that was brutal to see.
Yeah, I liked it.
But
A big fan.
all right, let's shift over to the defense. Basically, the reason they won the Super Bowl was this defense. You mentioned some of the guys they lost: Malik Jackson, Danny Trevathan. Potentially going to lose Aqib Talib. We're recording this before anything is official, but there might be a suspension coming for shooting yourself in the leg. Not always a good
Hey,
idea.
he got
do that.
First day of practicing the other day, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, finally got to practice, so we'll see what happens there. I would say top to bottom, the front seven was the best last season, and probably going to take a tiny step back without Malik Jackson, but they signed a guy in Jared Crick, who played in Houston and Nebraska before that, and his entire life in high-profile football has been taking up blockers so the better pass rusher could get to the quarterback. And if he can continue doing that in Denver, you get to unleash, Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and Shane Ray on quarterbacks this season. So I'm very optimistic this defense can stay at least close to what they were last year. Maybe not as points-wise dominance, but at least coming up with big plays and pressuring quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if just by just looking at him alone, like you said, Jared Crick, he just looks like a guy that soaks up blockers. I mean, he's in that 6'5", 300, almost 300-pound range. I mean, he's just that guy that's going to stand out there and be in the way, but be in the way the right way. And I don't hope he can do it, but I believe he will be able to do that. Just that. He's not a glory guy. He's not going to want to go rogue and try to rip through blockers and make tackles. He knows he's there to get tackles for Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Brandon Marshall, other guys, those guys.
For sure. And replacing Danny Trevathan at inside linebacker, a guy named Todd Davis, who, from everything I'm reading, obviously it's a pretty optimistic take, but everything I'm reading is that he's got the athleticism to run the defense, maybe not as much of a ball hawk and, always kind of is around the play like Trevathan was, but can do the job. So hopefully not a huge step back there. Wayne, where do you see the Broncos taking the biggest step back, either on defense or just as a team as a whole?
Why? Obviously, it's going to be quarterback. They're losing in one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and replacing him with the butt fumble guy. That's the most plain way to say it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I wish I had some type of comeback for that, but God, that is like the worst football blooper ever.
Exactly.
And it happened in like HD. That's the worst part about it. Like all those old ones, like all the crazy plays from like the football follies of the 70s and 80s. It's like grainy TVs, you can't really tell. Nope, this one's crystal clear. Thursday night game.
Yeah,
Everybody watching.
He ran into another man's behind and fumbled the ball.
It's so clear you
plain
can
as
read
day.
his lips. You can read him be like, oh, shit. you, you can feel it come off his lips, and you're like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, that's.
But I mean,
man.
anytime you had Von Miller on the other side of the ball, you're going to have a chance. They paid him a lot of money, and it was well deserved. He was the Super Bowl MVP, one of the best linebackers in the league, if not the best. Just such a good pass rusher, can defend the run too. The guy can do it all on defense.
Yeah. I am probably more optimistic than I should be, because my theory that I keep trying to maybe convince myself of is that the defense is going to probably take a 10 to 15% drop off just because of the people they lost and getting a little bit older and everything like that. But then I've just got to – I'm hoping against hope here that with a healthy quarterback and a better offensive line that the offense can pick it up a little bit, so we're not relying on the defense as much. So hopefully it balances out.
It could.
Well,
It's going to come down to the quarterback play, really.
It really will. And with that, let's jump over to our record predictions. Wang, since you don't really have a dog in this division, let's start with you.
Like I said, I think they're going to take a step back. It's inevitable when you're losing, like I said, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Sure, he was a shell of himself at the end, but he might be the best football mind ever. Peyton Manning is one of the smartest players to ever play the game of football. And even just having him on the sidelines when he was benched, I'm sure had to help the team. So I think they take a little bit of a step back. They fall down to 9-7 and just miss out on the playoffs.
Okay, all right. And to your point of taking a step back, they have I believe it's the hardest or the second hardest schedule when you look at who they're playing in their last year schedule or last year record. So
that doesn't help.
Definitely a chance to take a step back. Steve, let's go with you since it's not your team yet. What do you see the Broncos going?
Well, I know I'm going to be harsh, and I just want them to be really bad because. I mean, I don't know.
They've won the division the last 5 years?
Yeah, that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because they signed the worst, probably one of the worst. The 31st ranked quarterback in the NFL this year is Mark Sanchez. So I think they're going to take a huge step back, go 5-11. For all the other teams, I wrote notes as to why. Under the Broncos, I just wrote they don't have anyone left. So other than Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, who yes are going to win them some games, but it's not the 80s. Defense isn't going to actually win you a championship. You still have to put some points on the board, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do much of anything with 10 new guys going to be on the offense. I just think they're going to dump it down the toilet and go 5-11. I hope they will.
Okay. All right. I have the Broncos, Super Bowl champion Broncos, going 11-5.
4-12 now, sorry.
Toss up between winning the division or being a wild card. So I think they're making the playoffs, but how they do it, yet to be seen.
Yeah, if anything happens,
I don't have a ton of faith in that Carolina game, just because they know that they underperformed the Super Bowl and got beat up by that defense. So they're going to come out hot. And then we have a couple of tough road games. At Cincinnati, week 3, that's a tough one. I feel like we're going to lose. I feel like we're losing both the Oakland and the Kansas City road games, and then I just threw in one more dumb loss somewhere. So
hopefully it's
Cam is
11-5.
In week 1, Cam is going to dab that very first down. He's going to be such a cocky fuck in that game because he's going to be so mad.
He might. Unless Von Miller hurts him.
Whoever has him on their fantasy team is getting 70 points from Cam Newton because he's going to try and succeed at doing everything. Like he's going to have 100 rush yards and 300 pass yards and 8 touchdowns. It's going to be ridiculous. Or it's going to be awful. One of the two.
Very well could. All right. Steve, where are we going next?
Well, let's go to my beloved Raiders because I don't know. I don't want them to go last.
The Oakland Raiders.
I'm tired of them being last, so let's go second to last.
Okay.
All
right, Wang, what do you have for acquisitions and departures here?
They added Bruce Irvin from Seattle, who's a good outside pass rush. Sean Smith from the Chiefs, cornerback coming over. And Reggie Nelson, who led the NFL in interceptions last year, coming over from the Bengals. And they didn't really lose anybody too major. They lost Justin Tuck, who was old and not very good anymore. But the big one they did lose was Charles Woodson, who was still good and just an emotional leader on that team.
For sure. Charles Woods could still play.
Yeah,
he could.
If he showed up to training camp tomorrow, he'd still.
For sure.
If there was a vote for coolest player in the NFL, he would have had it last year, hands down. Like, I mean, how do you not idolize a guy like that just plays through every bit of pain and every bit of injury and every bit of age? I mean, he actually performed where Peyton Manning, was not good. Charles Woodson was good.
True. Peyton Manning was carried to the end. But what do you have for departures, Wayne?
Those are the only two, just Justin Tuck and Charles Woodson.
Those two? Okay. All right, let's start offensively. Obviously, a really young team because they've finally started drafting well after like 2 decades of drafting near the top of the draft. They finally started hitting on some. And they got Derek Carr, quarterback, and then Cooper at wide receiver, Amari Cooper at wide receiver. Really started forming a really good chemistry and making big plays last season. And then on the other side, Michael Crabtree kind of doing a little career revival after his run in San Francisco. He probably picked up more of the slack last season near the second half when Cooper had some drop issues and wasn't performing up to his usual level. Crabtree kind of stepped in for him. Steve, as a Raider fan, you got to be pretty excited that you got a young quarterback who seems to be pretty good and wide receivers that can make big plays for you.
Yeah, it's unfamiliar territory. I mean, it's been so long since they've had a set of guys. Like every offense that does well has like their guys. They're a couple guys that they go to. It's 3rd and 8. They're who they're going to go to. Well, last year I was like 3rd and 8. We're going to throw a pass to Amari Cooper. I mean, or 3rd and 8. We're going to try to go outside to Latavius Murray. But at least now they have that go-to play. They have a guy they can look to for a big play, and it's been a while since that's been around.
For sure. And you mentioned Latavius Murray, a guy that he's very, very solid. Hasn't had maybe like that huge breakout game or season that if you're not like really paying attention, you might not have heard of him. But a guy that seems to have all the talent that the Raiders need him to do, especially with that Del Rio's offense where he likes to run guys in between the tackles and then kind of use the pass game off of that.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds ridiculous talking about divisions, but he's a fantasy sleeper for next year. He had 75% of their rush yards last year, and it's going to just go up from there. I mean, if you watch some of the plays, he gets between the tackles, and if there's a seam, he's going 30 yards. And if he gets any sort of space, he's gone. He's got absolute speed out of the backfield, but it takes him a couple steps to get there. He's got those huge strides.
For sure, and a guy his size, I mean, it's crazy how fast he can get going when he gets some space, like you mentioned.
Yeah, he's a big guy, but he's also got that outside speed, and I think that's sort of today's running back. Some of those other big smash and bash guys really aren't around anymore, so you either have to be extremely fast or have enough speed that when you do get the edge, you can score.
Definitely, and I think what happened a few years ago once Jack Del Rio took over for you, the offensive line has gotten better every year, and I think this version of your offensive line is going to be the best it's been maybe since that Super Bowl year.
Yeah,
it's scary for a guy like me who was cheering against you because you got guys that can move people.
Yeah, they got Gabe Jackson. That guy's an absolute Clydesdale out there. He's just a big horse. He is a big fella, but he can move some people.
Definitely. Moving over to the defense, we've mentioned them a little bit already, but Khalil Mack, obviously a breakout season last season as a rookie. What was he, in the top 5 for sacks last year?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was way up there. Let me check my stats here.
Yeah.
And he was all-pro at 2 positions, which has never been done.
Yeah, which is a little crazy, but
defensive end and outside linebacker. That doesn't happen.
He slightly reminds me of like Javon Kearse. I know that's kind of an extreme comparison. He's not the same style, but where it's like he's just a freak. I mean, that's what they said about Javon Kearse.
Oh,
What
yeah.
they say about him. He's just a freak back there. That you put him in a position, he's gonna do pretty well, other than like safety. But if he can do everything pretty well.
Definitely. And Wang mentioned Bruce Irvin, going to be a guy on the other side. Now the question becomes for everybody else that plays him, who do you double team? you probably have to lean towards Mac. But then if you're going to depend on a one-on-one block with Bruce Irvin, ask the Broncos in the Super Bowl and the Patriots and everybody else.
Yeah.
Bruce Irvin one-on-one's a monster.
Yeah, and then don't sleep on Mario Edwards Jr. He's not a small. Yeah, he's a threat.
Over on the other side.
Yeah, he only had a couple sacks last year, but he's good. If he gets his chance, he's going to get the sack. So I think he'll be a little bit of a sleeper next year. I think he'll do some good things just because Mac had such a good year. He's going to get that J.J. Watt style treatment where he draws all the blockers, but that just opens it up for somebody who's decent on the other end, and I think he's that guy who's pretty good. Not great in space. He's not going to go out there and defend a screen pass very well, but he can get up in there and get some sacks and make some tackles off the edge.
For sure. And we mentioned some of the losses they had in the secondary. Charles Woodson. That was probably their weakest point defensively last year. Do you feel like they made enough upgrades? We mentioned Sean Smith coming in. Do you feel like they made enough upgrades for their secondary to make that step with the rest of the team?
I think more is better, but I believe that the guys they did get and then the players that are there are going to make some big strides. DJ Hayden struggled, but at the same time, he's pretty young, and I think he's got the talent. There's plays where he makes a super good play, and I'm like, that's what we need a lot of. And I think the older he gets, the better he's going to do at that. And then they signed Reggie Nelson, who is an absolute ball hawk, and that's going to help them out because that's sort of Woodson's game. The only thing that scares me is they don't really have a guy in the secondary like Woodson used to do that can come up through the seam and make a tackle. And Woodson, if you watched any Raiders game, which I'm sure nobody who listens actually did other than Bart, who watched the couple Broncos games versus the Raiders, would know that Woodson made a ton of tackles out there in space. I mean, he was like second on the team in tackles for a 40-year-old corner. That's not too bad, and that's not what you want either. But he did it, and what else could you ask from him? And I just don't think anybody else on the team is going to be able to do that this year.
For sure. And even though I don't like them, the Raiders have one of my favorite players in the NFL in Sebastian Janikowski.
Oh, who doesn't love Seabass?
The man plays drunk. Seabass has flasks of alcohol on the sideline, and I want anyone to tell me different.
I mean, that's not true.
Seabass has the best job in all of sports. He can be as big as he wants. He can drink as much as he wants. But as long as he kicks the ball far, who gives a shit?
Kicks the ball the farthest, because let's face it, he has the strongest leg in the NFL, and you can't argue that. But he's 6'1", 270. He's a chubby big kicker. he's awesome.
Yeah, he boots that shit.
Yep.
What did he go last season on? I'm gonna look this up because we haven't done a ton on kickers, and Seabass is awesome.
He's the kicker.
Let's see here.
He
was 21 of 26 last year, and the only ones he missed were
probably 58, 60 yards.
Yeah, they were in the high 40s to mid 50s.
Yeah.
So
there's been times where they tee it up for him, and I'm like, let's not, because it's like halfway into the logo. I'm like, that's pretty far, and then he makes it, and I'm like, all right, do it again. So then they lose like 9 to 18,
For sure. All right. Let's move over to record predictions for these Raiders here. They're kind of the sexy pick to come out of the West. Lots of optimism for the Raiders. Kind of a new thing for them. I know, Steve, in side conversations we've had, you're a little nervous that everybody likes your Raiders this year.
It's uncomfortable. Like I said, they haven't been good since 2008. Or not 2008, I'm sorry, 2003. 2008 was like their worst year. But they haven't done anything since 2003, really. I mean, they haven't had a positive win percentage in quite a while. And so it's such uncharted territory. I'm nervous for them. Just the organization as a whole.
All right, Wang, let's start with you again for the record here.
I am all aboard the Raider bandwagon. I think they're turning the corner. This is the year Derek Carr and Amari Cooper have built the chemistry together. You had Latavius Murray. You got Crabtree on the other end who make sure you can't double Cooper all the time. Khalil Mack on the defense. Just everything shoring up. They're winning the division. They're going 11-5, and they're getting the 3 seed in the AFC playoffs.
Woo! The 3 seed.
I might cry.
That's hosting a playoff game, Steve.
Will the NFL allow that? Let's just go somewhere neutral instead. Let's not play in Oakland.
Maybe they'll invent another rule so they have to lose.
They might. They might. I don't like to talk about that.
All right, I'll go since the Raiders are your team, Steve. But I have Raiders. I'm not as far on the bandwagon as Logan is there, but I do think this is the year that the Raiders make that next step and get into the playoffs. I've got them going 11-5, and whatever the tiebreaker ends up being with Denver, because I have the two splitting their games this season. So I have them 11-5, making the playoffs either as a division winner or as a wild card, depending on how the tiebreakers shake out. And if they prove me wrong, I'll be like, well, yep, they're the Raiders. So
they always seem to upset you, so that's fair. Well, I'll go ahead and go. I got the Raiders at 10-6. You know, I took a little step back. I think they're just where you guys think they're going to win that 11th game. I think they're going to just slightly slip. It's not going to affect them much. 10-6, 11-5. It's still playoffs, and that's pretty cool. Host or not host, either way, they're in the playoffs, and I'll be thankful for that nonetheless. But there's a couple games that scare me. There's a couple games where they can get trapped into losing. They play at Jacksonville right after playing the Chiefs, where I think they could beat the Chiefs and be on a bit of a high, and then have to go over to Jacksonville and end up losing over there, which would be embarrassing because Jacksonville pretty much loses to everyone. That's their trend now. We pass the torch to them.
yeah, it's really weird that going to Jacksonville is now actually like a tough game as opposed to there's a win.
Yeah. And then I think the Panthers they're going to be tough next year, obviously, so they're going to lose that one. And then there's going to be a couple games that are just going to lose that they shouldn't lose. And then there's that Texans game. They're going to beat the hell out of the Broncos, that second to last game against them, I hope. And then they're going to end up losing to the Texans because they're going to be celebrating so much. That's the plan. And I'm okay with that.
Oh, wow. All right. And that's your Mexico City game.
Yeah,
so
ooh.
Have to go international for the loss. So we got them. So you got 10-6.
Yeah.
Is that going to make the playoffs?
Yeah, 10-6.
Right, so is that gonna make
I don't
the
think
playoffs
the
for you?
division's going to be too strong, so I think they're still going to 10-6 make the playoffs. Probably a lower seed though.
Okay. All right. So all of us have the. How crazy is it? We all have the Oakland Raiders winning double-digit games and making the playoffs.
Who's their
Times
quarterback
are
again?
changing.
Is Ken Stabler back? What happened?
No
Where's
kidding.
Rich Gannon?
All right. Let's jump over to the San Diego Chargers, and we saved them for last because I feel like we're all kind of on the same idea.
Because they're a dumpster fire.
that they're not going to be very good this year. All right. Lang, what do you have for their losses and pickups?
They added Jeff Cumberland, a tight end from the Jets, Travis Benjamin, a deep threat from the Browns, Casey Hayward, a decent corner from the Packers, Dwight Lowry, a free safety over from the Colts. They lost Ladarius Green, who went to the Steelers, and Eric Weddle was their biggest loss of the offseason, who went over to the Baltimore Ravens.
And that's huge.
Gotcha. And in all of those players that they picked up, did any of them happen to be offensive linemen?
No,
there, Wayne?
no, they sure didn't.
Sure didn't. And if you've listened to this preview to this point, every team other than the Chargers has a phenomenal pass rush. I don't know what the hell the Chargers are thinking coming into this season, having mediocre to bad offensive line play, but they're going to get killed again.
Phillip Rivers must have
We'll
made
get to-
somebody in the Chargers management extremely angry that they want to see him on his ass a lot this year, because that's what's about to happen.
Good.
For real.
Who doesn't
Like-
hate that guy anyways? So
For real.
I don't like him.
My most hated guy in the NFL. But
Bow tie wearing,
they
baby
already
having son
had-
of a bitch.
they already had good receiver play. So you bring in that Travis Benjamin from the Browns. Okay, that's cool.
yep.
But, like, you had one weakness that really killed everything you tried to do. Obviously, they're one of the worst teams at getting bit by the injury bug, too. Can't ignore that. But they had their biggest weakness they didn't do anything for. And one of the themes of these previews are, like, if you didn't get better, you got worse. And they were already bad to begin offensive line-wise to begin with. So they're going to be really bad.
Yeah, I don't know who was drafting and signing free agents for them, but they were drunk or high because they didn't do much of anything that they needed. Like they had like 6 needs and they addressed 0 of them. I don't know why. Are they trying to pull a Sixers here and play for the play or build for the future? I don't
Trust the process.
I mean, maybe they're trying to get to LA. I mean, they're not. Or did they finally commit to San Diego? I thought they were still trying to.
I believe they did
They
commit
have
to
a year
LA.
in San Diego, and then they're going from there.
Oh man.
So it's still up in the air.
All right. Well, they're going to LA. If they can't get something done, and everybody knew it the last 2 years, they're gone.
Yeah, I don't.
And defensively, I don't have a ton of notes on the Chargers defense because they lost their only
What defense?
like standout guy in Weddle. Casey Hayward, like you mentioned from the Packers, was good. Interesting to see if he's going to be either a number 1 corner or what position he ends up filling. But otherwise, I'm not sure what the Chargers are going to be defensively,
The biggest
especially with
storyline-
their number 1 pick.
Yeah, their biggest storyline on the defensive side of the ball right now is that they haven't signed Joey Bosa yet.
Yeah, and his mom's out here saying that they wish they pulled an Eli Manning and said they weren't going to San Diego.
I love that Eli Manning turned into a verb.
I know, it's impressive. But and the thing is, like, the Chargers are trying to pay that guy the lowest you can pay a third overall pick, and it's like, if you don't think he's that good, why'd you draft him?
Exactly.
Trade back on the pick a few picks. You're probably still going to be able to pick up Bosa, and now you get him an extra couple of draft picks.
Pay the man. He earned.
Pay the man.
He earned being the number 1 or the number 3 overall pick.
And it's not like you have to pay him an
Exactly.
absurd amount for the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah,
No.
especially with the collective bargaining agreement the way it is now. They've changed the
Yeah,
rules.
the
so
rookie pay scale, you
can't
get them for a
overpay
deal for
rookies.
4 years. Yeah, you get them. You basically get them for a steal, as long as they're not the number 1 overall pick.
I mean, that's
Even
For
then,
4
it's
years.
not bad.
no. I mean,
No,
the Raiders
They're
were
not throwing
full of
Bradford money around anymore.
the Raiders are full of 1st-round picks a few years ago, and they still had lots of cap room. I mean,
Yeah, I mean that's how they were able to get Irvin and those guys. But let's jump over to record predictions for these Chargers here. I will go first, and I hate this team, and I hate their schedule. I don't see them doing shit. I've got them going 13-3 and contending for
3-13.
the number 1 pick in the draft. Or 3-13, excuse me. Wow, my bad.
scared the hell out of me.
3-13. 3-13, contending for the number 1 pick in the draft. I think they're going to lose every division game, and I think by significant margins. And the only games I have them winning are they host Tennessee in November, and where's the other one? Oh, at the Cleveland Browns, because I feel like the Browns might have packed it in by that point.
Yeah, the Browns are playing for a draft pick by then, so
Yeah. Otherwise, I want Phillip Rivers to have a terrible year and then try to play his way out of San Diego, just because I hate that guy. But yeah, 3-13, one of the worst teams in the NFL.
yep.
I have them a tad better. I don't know where the extra win I'm giving them is, but I have them coming in at 4-12 and also being towards the bottom of the league.
Gotcha. And Steve?
Yeah, I think this is about the only thing in the AFC West that me and Bart actually agree on is 3-13. Those 3 wins are the exact 3 wins I wrote down, and the only reason I can't give them 4 is because they won 4 last year and they did everything they could do to get worse.
Yeah,
Like
you're so right. Like, they didn't get any better, and why would 4-12 get any
They
better?
drafted a fullback.
I think if they-
I mean, let's just put that to rest. They drafted a fullback, which hasn't been done in a decade. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's related to J.J. Watt, so it makes sense.
yeah, that's what I said.
So obviously he's going to be God.
Somebody was drunk. Somebody was drunk.
All right, to recap, I've got San Diego going 3-13, Kansas City 10-6, and then Denver and Oakland, the 2 playoff teams from this division, both going 11-5. Pretty much a coin flip between who wins the division and who's the wild card team.
I have the Oakland Raiders winning the division at 11-5, the Chiefs making a wild card at 10-6, Broncos just missing out on the playoffs at 9-7, and the Chargers continuing to be a dumpster fire at 4-12.
Yep. I got the Raiders winning the division at 10-6, which I know is weird, but the Chiefs at 9-7, fairly average, doing exactly what we thought they'd do. Broncos at 5-11 because I hate them, and then the Chargers at 3-13, continuing to be the Chargers.
All right. That was our AFC West preview. Wayne, tell the people where they can find us.
First and foremost, we're on iTunes, so like, subscribe, download, share, all that fun stuff. We're also on Twitter, Fat Guys, capital N as in Nancy, Friends. We're on Facebook, Fat Guys and Friends. Or you can also email us, fatguysandfriends@gmail.com.
Steve, good job on first time on the podcast.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Breaking down this AFC West here.
It was
First
a pleasure.
of many, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Steve has been one of our friends since freshman year of college when we all met. Good guy.
Yeah,
He will be back. Possibly when the Raiders are, at the top of the division, just so he can yell at me.
Oh, yes.
At the Broncos start.
I won't yell. I'm classier than you.
Bart is a very good yeller.
He is.
True.
If there's one thing
All right.
Colton Bartholomew's known for, it's yelling.
It is.
Big.
That too. All right, that was the Fat Guys and Friends AFC West preview. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Goodbye.